Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Mindful Drinking Movement podcast. Welcome. If this is your first time here, you should listen to the previous episodes. And if you are a returning listener, welcome. My guest today is Sara Budhwani. She is the founder of Happy Tea, which is based in Amsterdam. And they are a company that makes microdosing products and microdoses. And we're going to interview Sara so we can hear a little bit more about this exciting venture that she's created. Happy Tea is a company that is born from a personal mission to transform social drinking culture. What began as a passion project, brewing tea blends for friends to reduce alcohol consumption, has evolved into a thriving business with thousands of customers across Europe, a diverse range of microdosing-inspired tea blends, and a growing number of community-focused events. Sara's unique perspective stems from her firsthand experience of how psilocybin microdosing can foster deeper connections, both personally and socially. She's passionate about redefining how we gather, replacing alcohol-fueled interactions with mindful and meaningful experiences. Through Happy Tea, she's seen the profound impact these substances can have, not just on individual well-being, but on social healing, a crucial step toward creating healthier, more connected communities. Hi, Sara. I'm so glad you're here.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Sarah's company found me through the algorithm on Instagram, and I was just instantly drawn to this vibrant blue tea. There's an image of this blue tea, and I was like, oh, I have to see what that is. Tell us about what's in that just before we kick off from the beginning.
Yeah, you're referring to our social butterfly blend, which is
Mhm.
our bestseller. The color definitely is attractive to most people. And essentially, the social butterfly is a really good example of what we do. And we really try to innovate blends to make them unique and interesting and something a bit more exciting than just having tea in a social setting. So our social butterfly blend, just using plants and natural ingredients, has a natural color changing effect. So it starts blue and it goes to a deeper purple, and you can see that transform right in front of you. And yeah, it's just like an interactive experience to do if you have some friends over.
Sounds like a lava lamp. Can you share the secret ingredient of how it changes color?
Yeah, I mean it's not so secret. A lot of people are familiar with butterfly pea flower, which is
Hmm.
a type of flower, and it has a beautiful natural blue color. And a lot of people use it in the food and beverage world. So we use that, and then we combine it with hibiscus, and hibiscus is the one that helps change it to that deep purple color. So the combination of the two is that color changing effect.
Oh my God, that's so cool. Well, I can't wait to get mine. I ordered one. It's coming to me and I'm super excited. I would love to kind of rewind the tape and go back to, I don't know how long it was for you, but kind of some defining moments or a defining period of time when you realized that alcohol really wasn't for you anymore or that you wanted to change it. Could you tell us about that time of your
Yeah,
life?
for sure. I've been someone who's always been like I grew up as a shy kid. I've always been an introvert, and I've always used alcohol to help with my social anxiety. It was definitely, that social lubricant for me that I really enjoyed. But I noticed, yeah, about like 3, 4 years ago that it was starting to give me really horrible hangovers. And I noticed that I was really just trying to contribute to that social pressure. So drinking more when I had more of that social pressure versus me actually wanting to drink more. Um, but I loved alcohol for that. It really helped me with my social anxiety in that moment. And so what really sparked the change for me was how horrible my hangovers were getting. I remember at one point I drank like, I don't know, 2 or 3 beers. And the next day I was so hungover and I was like,
Oh.
this is not going to work.
Yeah. Okay. So, and then what happened? And then what did you do or decide from there?
Yeah, so that was kind of happening. And then what really happened was I went on a high dose journey and I actually did ayahuasca. And that was a pivotal point for me in many different ways. And I think it was really after that point that I started to look at alcohol differently. I actually saw how alcohol is so systematic in our society and how I wanted to move away from these systems that are put in place for us. And once I saw alcohol as a system, I started to be like, okay, what happens when I remove myself from this system? And then that was really interesting because I would go out with friends, they would all be drinking, and I would ask myself, I would check in before, and I would say, did I think about alcohol before this point? Or am I only interested in alcohol because people around me are drinking? And so I would ask myself these type of questions. And do I actually really want this? Or do I just want this because other people are offering it to me or drinking it around me? And once I started to do these like surveys in my head, these check-in points, every time I would socialize, the answer always was no. The answer was always like, no, you weren't thinking about this before. It was clear to me that I was really just responding to social pressure. And then once I started to realize that, I was like, oh, I'm falling in the trap of the system. I'm falling in the trap of, how everyone else feels they need to drink just because this is what you do. And so that was a pivotal moment for me to realize, oh, actually, you should have more control over your decisions and what it is that you really want to do. And then I started to realize, okay, I'm going to say no because the answer actually is no. I'm just saying yes to the social pressure. And once I had that check-in with myself and removed my association with that social pressure, then it was just a clear no. Actually, I don't want to drink.
Mm-hmm. So you started saying no when you were going no to yourself, right? No, no, I will not drink, but just no to yourself and making that a clear affirmative choice internally. But would you still go out? Were you still going out with friends and just not drinking around them?
Yeah, exactly. I was still going out and I would just order, I don't know, like a ginger beer or something else or just have water. It's quite boring. I don't have, a lot of non-alcoholic options around me, right? And so that was starting to get difficult because it's like, yeah, what do I drink instead? And having very, very limited options. So at the same time that this was happening and after my big ayahuasca journey, I started to introduce microdosing into my life. So that's kind of how microdosing came in. And I really, really enjoyed microdosing. And then I had the idea, what if I microdose socially instead of drinking alcohol? And so that's kind of how microdosing entered my social life. So I noticed that it was bringing me so much joy. It was bringing me so much energy throughout the day. I was more creative. I was more productive at work. I would wake up and like get ready for, have this joy for the day opposed to like dreading the day. Like so many positive things were happening in my life with microdosing. So if I was going out in the evening, I would microdose before I would go out and then socialize and then not partake in alcohol and the social pressure around it. And people would ask me, why aren't you drinking? And I would say, well, I microdosed. I'm good. Mm-hmm. And then everyone's like, what? You did what? Like, are you on shrooms right now? I don't understand what you're doing.
Even in Amsterdam?
Yeah. Because, in Amsterdam, it is more accessible. They've had accessibility to psilocybin for so many years, but it's very present in rave culture. You go, to a rave, to a big festival, and then people are doing these drugs. But at a house party, it's still a very weird concept. And even the word microdose was still quite new then, even like 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. That me saying that I microdosed shrooms. They don't understand the difference between microdosing and taking a large dose. So automatically I'm getting treated like I took a high dose of shrooms. Mm-hmm. So I noticed that there is this stigma, even in these social settings, even though it's a bit, yeah, surprising because people are familiar with them. And it was such a weird concept for people to think you're not drinking alcohol because you're microdosing shrooms. Like they just couldn't comprehend that. They didn't understand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that really showed me that, yeah, there's this stigma still existing in social settings. And I realized that I needed to educate all my friends as to why I was doing this. And I wanted people to understand if only you could feel what I was feeling, because I was feeling great. Like I was like, I
Mm-hmm.
need alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
My social anxiety is, being better. I'm more energetic. I have the energy to socialize. I'm not getting drained. I'm not getting tired. All these benefits are happening. But I'm like, if only you could feel what I could feel, then you would understand why it is that I'm doing this opposed to drinking alcohol. So
Mm-hmm.
luckily at that time, it was COVID. And so there wasn't a lot of options to do and to socialize. So a lot of people were having these house parties or get-togethers at their home because there was nowhere else to go. So it was actually a perfect timing for me to invite friends over, make them these pot of teas, put it in the middle of the table and just say, there's a microdose of magic truffle in this pot. If you like some, go for it. If not, bring your own alcohol because I don't have it here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really when the magic started to unfold because people were curious because they knew I was doing this already. And then they would have a cup, try it out and then have a bit more. And then they started to notice the effects and they're like, oh, I can understand now what you mean by this concept.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Amazing. Could you define more clearly, just for people who are not savvy with microdosing yet, what defines a microdose versus like a megadose, and like what is the spectrum of dosage?
Yeah, totally. First of all, it's two separate conversations. Like they're two different experiences. And because I am well experienced now with microdosing socially, I like to compare it to alcohol because everyone is quite familiar with alcohol. So at the end of the day, we are microdosing alcohol. When you drink a beer, when you drink a glass of wine, that is microdosing. So you're not getting drunk. You're just,
Hmm.
taking small doses of it. So the same thing works with psychedelics. You're just taking small doses of that psychedelic, not for the intention to get high, but for the intention of just having a very small effect from that with still being functional, still being able to have a conversation. So the main difference is macrodosing. You're essentially getting these intense emotions, you're escaping reality a little bit, and you're having this profound experience where you can actually hallucinate, get high, and feel a bit, yeah, out of reality, opposed to
Hmm.
microdosing, fully functional, fully present. You're fully able to have a normal conversation with someone, but you have this little dose of magic, this little dose of uh, feeling loose and feeling a bit more relaxed and
Hmm.
having a dose of serotonin, so having a mood boost.
Hmm.
I like to say it's like all your worries go away and you just all of a sudden have a smile on your face and you have no idea why. So it's not a very noticeable effect, but what I love the most is usually the people around you notice it before you notice it on yourself.
Hmm. Well, that's so interesting. I notice when I take a microdose, I kind of immediately breathe really deep. Like I just like want more air in my body, and I'm like very luxurious with my breath. And then I feel like tidying and organizing things. And I'm like treating my environment like an extension of me. I feel like really vibrationally connected to my surroundings. And
Yeah.
people, you get like much more juicy with people. Like I really love my kids all the time, even if I drink wine or whatever, which I don't get wasted or anything anymore. But like when I microdose around my kids, I like feel them, like I feel their energy. I feel like so enamored with them and like really entering into their world instead of I'm on top of them, controlling them, kind of like, it
Cool.
just slows things down. It
Yeah.
slows down, to me, microdosing. I've done massive doses of mushrooms too, like in ceremony, which is another thing, completely. But I feel like time becomes less pressing because time is not linear anyhow, right? Like we've made it a linear construct.
Mhm.
But I feel like that kind of becomes so um, non-hierarchical, right? Even if I have to be somewhere on time, but like I've done a microdose, I feel much more relaxed. I feel like settled into life and movement rather than I'm like on a clock, which gives me anxiety. And I feel
Mhm.
like that's how microdosing really helps me relieve anxieties. It makes me not a time-based creature. It makes me feel really embodied.
Yeah, it makes you feel more present. And that's
Yeah,
like
for sure.
such a crucial thing when you're socializing and you're trying to connect with people. You need that presence, right? And yeah, everything you explained in terms of what you feel for someone who is microdosing for the first time, that might not be so obvious to them, right? They may not be so obviously like, oh, I'm breathing a bit more deeper, or I'm feeling more connected to people, because it's so hard to put that into words. It's so hard to tell, oh, you're going to feel more connected to people. People are going to be like, what? What? That's so abstract, right? Unless you actually feel it. And
Hmm.
so that's why we notice with a lot of first time microdosers, they're like, I don't know if I'm feeling it or not, but yet their friend is like, oh yeah, you're feeling it. Like I can tell on your face, you're smiling, you're glowing, and so these little things can actually have such a big impact, especially in moments when you're trying to connect with people or connect with yourself. But it might not be so obvious. And so that's something that I also love with microdosing, is that it's so subtle, but yet so
Hmm.
impactful.
Hmm. 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 And it does make you so present that it's not like you're outside looking in on your life and you can notice these differences. It's like you're in the moment experiencing them.
Yeah.
I don't want to like blanket statement anyone's first time microdosing, but it could be that they reflect back to the original experiences of microdosing, and then they can kind of see in retrospect they
Exactly.
did feel differently, or like the day went differently. For sure, I love microdosing because it just helps me manage my stress. So it makes me, I want to say nicer, like I'm a bitch or something, and then a magic mushroom makes me a nice person, but it
Yeah.
makes me feel much less reactive
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
these kind of trivial things that happen to us all day long. It's like it lets things, it allows my mind to kind of let go easier and not grab onto something and get angry about it. It feels like things just kind of flow more easily through my
Totally.
nervous system. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And part of that is detaching and, like being more accepting. And again, those are all things that help you just be more present and help you be more open to connection, whether that's to yourself or to other people.
Hmm. Hmm. I'd love to hear more about the study that you conducted.
Yeah, so basically, Happy Tea was born after that, after my personal experience with it and noticing how much my friends were really loving it and kept asking me for more blends. And next thing you know, I just needed a shop, and then it's grown and grown and grown from there, which has been the most natural thing that's ever happened to me. It's such
Wow.
a beautiful surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And
Cool.
so now I feel every bone in my body that I need to do this, and I need to spread this word and message and these resources for people to do them themselves. And so part of that mission also involves, getting some science involved and getting some studies done to show if this can really be an effective social alternative. And so we did that. We partnered with a university here in the Netherlands, the University of Leiden, and the researchers at the Prism Lab there. And we invited them to some of our events, and they conducted pre-surveys and after surveys. So they were observing the participants before having happy tea and after having happy tea. And at these events, we just had a DJ, we had nice music, nice lights, nice setting, and then we had a happy tea bar. So the happy tea bar is essentially our concept of imagining a bar. Instead of going and getting a cocktail, instead you're getting a tea-based mocktail with other adaptogens, so other herbs and plants that actually help ease stress or boost energy or boost mood. And participants are able to grind their own truffles. So in the Netherlands, we use magic truffle because that's what's legal here, which also contains psilocybin, just like magic mushrooms. And so people grind it themselves and they put it in the drink themselves, and then we prepare the rest for them. So they're actually participating in making their own drink, which is a nice experience as well.
I love that.
So yeah, we have this happy tea bar experience that we've been testing out at many different events now. And of course, our dream is to have this as an actual real concept. So doing these studies help us make that dream a reality. So this was a very, exciting study that we did, and we have the preliminary results from it. And out of everyone that we surveyed, 90% said that they might or they would consider using it as an alcohol alternative, which is very promising. And a lot of people said that they prefer this over alcohol because it helped them feel more connected. It helped them feel more self-aware. And then also they wanted to avoid the negative effects of alcohol, which are the hangovers and the next day after regrets, and for health reasons and because it's safer. Mm-hmm. And so I think though that's because there's so much stigma around these psychedelics, because they're only really been used in social settings in high doses, that we really want to come across that microdosing, and especially the way that we serve it, which is very hard to overdose in the sense where you're taking too much that you don't want. It actually makes it a really, really safe option when you're socializing. And there's very, very little risk, actually no risk at all, to getting too high that you're unfunctionable, that you're going to do something crazy, like get in an accident or, be somewhere where you're not supposed to be.
Lay down on the ground and stare up at the sky.
Yeah,
that's the worst thing that happens to you.
Exactly. These things don't happen when you're microdosing, right? Because you're fully functional. So, these are the key things that we want to come across and that we want to share and show them in real life form of how safe and effective it can really be. And this is just basically our baby steps to getting to that end goal of making this more of a reality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that so much. I do have a question though about, like, if say these events or these functions, someone wants like 5 cups of tea and there's maybe a gram of microdose in each one, would they be then taking about 5 grams of psilocybin?
Yeah, it's a great question. So basically, when you're taking a dose of psilocybin, you have to think of it as a dose at each time. So if you're taking 1 gram of truffles and then a couple hours later you take another gram of truffles, that's just stacking on top of that gram. So it's not like you're taking 2 grams or having the experience of taking 2 grams at once. Mm-hmm. So by stacking it is less intense than taking it all at once. Mm-hmm. So because of that, if someone so in our study, for example, on average, people had 2 cups of tea, and each cup had 2 grams of magic truffle. For those who are familiar with mushrooms, that's like 0.2 grams of mushrooms. So it's different dosing when it comes to, so it's still very much a microdose. And so in total, on average, people had 4 grams in one night, or 0.4 grams of mushrooms. And, but that was over 2 cups of tea. So again, it's not like they're having 4 grams, that the experience of having 4 grams at once. By stacking it, you get a little bit buzz from the 2 grams. And then once that starts going down, you kind of bring that buzz a bit back up
Mm-hmm.
for with your next drink.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if you could elaborate for us a little bit on what makes psilocybin non-addictive.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the science behind it, it's not binding to opioid receptors.
Mm.
So it's not hitting those, yeah, same uh, chemical pathways that, let's say, like alcohol does.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the chart of most addicting drugs, mushrooms are on the bottom of the list. So it is not an addictive substance in terms of what it's made out of and what happens to your brain. People would argue, though, if you take a lot of high dose psychedelic experiences, that the experience itself can be addicting. And that, of
Mm.
course, is a case by case situation where it really depends on, are you the type of person to be addicted to experiences, and
Mm-hmm.
where are you in your current life, and how does that relate to the experiences that you have, et cetera, et cetera. So it's definitely very relevant per person. But again,
Mm-hmm.
on a microdosing experience, because it's not such a profound experience where you're having all these fun, crazy hallucinations, right? It's not an experience that you would get addicted to, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, for example, I have access to this 24/7, and I only microdose now probably twice a month. Um,
Mm.
so I don't, again, it depends on how many social occasions I have per month. But what I absolutely love about microdosing is that it works even when you're not taking it because it's actually promoting neural pathways in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Now I feel like my social anxiety is 10 times better than what it was when I started because it's actually helping me. And so
Mm-hmm.
because of that, I can now go out, socialize. I don't necessarily have to drink happy tea, but I can still tap into what happy tea does for me.
Sarah, can you tell us who is possibly not a good candidate for microdosing?
Yeah, so there's still a lot of research being done on this, and we follow a lot of the up-to-date research on, yeah, basically these different groups of people that are more prone to negative consequences from these drugs. One group that has been coming out is definitely people who suffer from bipolar diseases and conditions. And definitely, if you're taking bipolar medication, you should definitely avoid microdosing. And this is just based on the research that they're finding in regards to what it does with your brain and the neural pathways in your brain and how it can disrupt, yeah, personality disorders. Of course, there's the risk of schizophrenia, people who have suffered from it in the past. And so again, just more and more research just needs to be done to know things exactly. But at the moment, it's just well known in the world, in the microdosing world, to avoid these drugs if you're suffering from bipolar, any sort of personality disorder, or schizophrenia.
Mm-hmm.
But this research is changing all the time, so it's definitely good to stay up to date with them and just
Mm-hmm.
how things are progressing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do your homework and your personal assessing if
Definitely.
you are on any sort of prescription-based medication for things like anxiety or depression. I would imagine that's something that you would want to feel really comfortable with, or do your personal investigating, or speak to your doctor if they're open open-minded to that conversation. Um, and then I'd love to close with your personal take on, like, what would you say to people who have kind of a hindrance of, like, say they're a good candidate and they're inclined to trying microdosing, and they're probably also someone who would like to not drink as much, or not drink or sub out alcohol use with microdosing, for example, but they feel hesitant because of the stigma, the taboo that psychedelics are illegal in most places in the world still, or like they might get in trouble, or like what that kind of withdrawal feelings, that people are probably experiencing who might be listening to this. We're like, oh, I think I do want to try microdosing, and yet I feel scared too.
Yeah, we get that all the time. And even in a place in the Netherlands where it's so accessible, I hear this all the time. And it's fair. I mean, there's so much stigma around it that people only know one side of the story. So then for them to explore another side of the story really involves with them just trying it or just hearing it from a friend who's tried it and hear their story. And so I think this is why, especially here, there's a lot more interest towards microdosing because more and more people are doing it. They're telling their friends and family about it or even their coworkers. And then this story is then influencing other people to feel less scared about it and more open to it. So my advice for these people is always to, of course, do your research, but then also understand that, there's two different experiences. The microdosing and macrodosing are two different experiences. So to be open to a different type of experience. And again, to my comparison at the beginning with alcohol, a lot of people are not scared to have one glass of wine.
Or 6 or 7.
Yeah. So then you shouldn't be scared to have one cup of tea of a microdose drink, or, whatever way you want to consume it. For the tea aspect, I love the tea and I'm a big advocate for drinking your microdose in tea for a number of different reasons. But also this helps people in terms of if they're feeling a bit scared because it makes it more accessible. So you're feeling like you're drinking something, which is something you're already so familiar with, opposed to eating a substance. It's in your stomach. And if you're feeling too much, well, too bad. It's already in your stomach. That's why I love the tea, because you can just have one sip, see how you feel, have a cup, see how you feel. And if you want more, go for it. If you don't, you just stop, right? It's so much easier to dose that way and much safer and much, more tailored to how exactly you're going to feel. Because everyone, of course, have different tolerances of these drugs, just like alcohol. So highly recommend putting it in tea and drinking it, opposed to eating the whole substance and then being like, oh, I feel too much.
Wait and see what happens.
Yeah, right? There's a bit too much of a mystery. And I think a lot of people are scared of that mystery. We'll just take out the mystery by putting it in tea. And then the other thing I would say is try it with someone. Like a lot of conversation around microdosing is on that interpersonal experience and doing it for yourself, which of course microdosing is so great for that. But it's also great to do it with someone and to have that experience together. And that could help you, ease any anxiety around it, but also to make the experience shareable, which is always more healthy, and makes things a bit more easier, especially if something comes up and you don't know what to do about it. Well, you have someone there with you. So that would be my 2 recommendations. Yeah.
That is great advice. That's great advice. Thank you so much for being with us today, and tell us where we can find Happy Tea, where can we find you on the socials. And do you service North America?
Yes. So you can find Happy Tea at, you can find us on Instagram at Microdose Together. On our Instagram, we have our links to all our websites. So that's kind of the best place to go. And then for Europe shopping, we have microdosetogether.com. And in Europe, that's where you can buy the tea and the truffle. So we sell it separately. And then you're the one that's actually putting it together into one brew. That's how we stay legal. And so in Europe, both are accessible. And then we have shophappytea.com for UK and Canada. And that's just the tea only. And our tea also works with mushrooms if you have access to that. But in Europe is the only place where, unfortunately, we can ship it with the truffle.
Do you ship to the US?
And in the US, we have a partner called Microdose, and they sell our tea blends on their shop, and they also sell a range of different microdosing products. Their products are really, really well done. So we're really excited to work with them. And yeah, you can buy our teas through them.
Amazing. Cool. Everybody go check out Microdose Together on Instagram. And Sarah, it was such a pleasure to have you. And I look forward to connecting with you again. And I can't wait to try my social butterfly tea when it gets here.
Thanks so much. It was a pleasure.
Sarah. I'm not wanting to.
Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Can I make my side softer?
Can I make my side firmer?
Can we sleep cooler?
Sleep Number does that. Cools up to 8 times faster and lets you choose your ideal comfort on either side. Your Sleep Number setting. And now save 50% on the new Sleep Number limited edition smart bed. Plus free home delivery when you add a base. Ends Monday. Exclusively at a Sleep Number store near you. Learn more at sleepnumber.com.